Hello, ladies. I'm not sure which mic is working, but one of them is. Thank you for coming here so early in the morning. Really appreciate it. I actually took a photo on the way in of the tower and sent it randomly to someone I work with, just to make the point, I actually can do this. So we're really lucky today. I'm joined by Sarah, who is my partner in crime, and my other partner in crime, Bella. And we are going to be doing a little interview with the lovely Vivienne, who is a trailblazer in our data and AI and privacy community. So thank you, Vivienne, for giving up some time to come and chat with us. We're going to also have a little bit of a reflection towards the end of the chat between Sarah, myself, and Vivienne on sort of what we would say to our former selves. Our younger selves. Well, let's hope we have all evolved to a degree over time. So hopefully you'll find that interesting and useful. And after our conversation, we're going to go upstairs and have some breakfast and use it as an opportunity to do a little bit of networking. Before I hand over to Sarah to do an intro on Vivienne, I just want to say a few words about the BT Tower. So we're actually in, and we're lucky to be here because the BT Tower, as it currently exists, won't be like this for many more years. In a few years' time, it's going to be turned into a hotel. It will not be the BT Hotel, but we have sold the building, and it has a fantastic history, and it was built in, or opened in 1965. So actually, one of the things that actually happened before I was born. And it, Harold Watson oversaw the opening of the tower, and it was built as obviously for communications purposes. And at the time, it was deemed an official. All the plans and everything about all the information around the building was deemed part of the Official Secrets Act, and that's because it had the microwave aerials that you can see around the tower, which is used not just for business and personal communication, but also our military and defense communications. And it was built in this tower, this round tower shape, because the thinking at the time was it would need to withstand nuclear attacks. And apparently that round shape seemed to, the buildings that were in a round shape seemed to actually survive those sorts of incidents. So we're safe for a while. But I should say, if the fire alarm goes off, it's not a drill. So I have been told. Up until about 1980, it was the tallest building in London. No longer, of course. But it has a special place in the heart of anyone who works for BT, because it is sort of the emblem, and it's a really iconic British symbol. So, and there are a few little things around, so do take some photos, because it's not going to look like it does soon. Okay, having said all of that, I'm handing over to Sarah to do a little bit of an intro.
Thank you. Thank you, Janine. Okay, so thank you again for coming to another one of our WiLD events. Now, Vivienne Artz, I don't think really needs much of an intro. The name, well, certainly she's been not aging. We've been around together a long time. We've known each other a long time. Well, actually, what I will say is there was a time where Vivienne was in-house. She's had esteemed career, and we're going to talk about this in some detail, obviously, today, so I won't go into detail. But she won't remember. There was a time where I was a lowly associate, very junior, in another law firm, and we were working with Vivienne's team when she was in-house. And that name, it's quite a distinctive name, I think you might have, has always stuck in my mind. But I really remember meeting her during that process and always being in awe, actually, an admirer. Really inspired by, I think that was sort of, say, for a more standard sort of in-house legal practice. And then Vivienne has gone on to do a number of things, and now OBE, shall we not forget, also at the end of her name. and is now CEO for the FTSE Women's Leaders Review, which I'm sure she'll go into more detail now. So, as I say, I won't go into detail. We're going to talk about her journey now, but really an inspiring woman. So thank you for sparing the time today, Vivienne. And I will now hand over. We're going to do a little fireside chat, as Janine said, and then I'll come and join in a little conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. And actually, you've just reminded me of probably one of my memories about Vivienne. She may have forgotten it. Lord, I hope she has. But this was many, many, many years ago, and we were both in Israel at a regulator conference. And I remember going into my room late in the evening. I just checked in and switching the TV on, and it switched on, and it was absolutely blasting. And I couldn't get the volume to come down, and I couldn't get it to switch off. So I had to phone reception eventually, just, please send somebody up, please send somebody up. And I had a knock at the door, and I thought, please let this be the guy who's going to come and fix this. And as I opened the door, I saw Vivienne had come out of her room in her lovely coordinated pajamas and was standing there. Who is this person that is keeping the whole hotel up? Anyway, that was and I kept thinking, I don't care if I wake anyone else up, but please let this stop so I don't keep Vivienne awake.
Gosh, that must have been truly terrifying. I remember that. I thought it was, I do, the noise, gosh, it was incredible. Yeah. I thought it was something combined with a hairdryer, though.
Oh, no, it was
the TV?
It was the TV.
Yeah.
So, there we go. I'll never forget that one.
The importance of your beauty sleep. I needed my sleep.
Yes. Anyway, so now Vivienne has always struck me as someone who makes very thoughtful career moves. And Vivienne, you've had an interesting and varied career, and you've not been someone who has just focused on the job that she's doing and the company she's working for. You've always sort of put your tentacles out into other things and got involved in a lot of things. And you have been particularly involved in helping women enter into the financial services sector and mentoring them in that space. And so you've been, I think, at a time when very few women were doing that, you were doing it. So I would be grateful if you could talk to us a little bit about the career journey and sort of what made you move at time to different roles and get involved in some of these other activities.
No, thank you so much. Lovely to be here today. Lovely to see some new faces, but there's loads of friendly faces and people I know very well. So super nice to see you again today. So I think my career journey started in a way that's similar to many people in this room. I decided to do law. My journey to law wasn't, I didn't study law at university. In fact, let's wind it back. When I was applying to university, it was actually a female English teacher who said to me, you really ought to apply to Oxford. And so I went home and I said, the English teacher said I should apply to Oxford. What do you think? And my dad was like, yeah, go for it. Sounds fantastic. And so I put in an application to Oxford, and the academic dean hauled me in and said, I'd very much like you to withdraw your application, please. We've never had anyone go to Oxford University, or Cambridge for that matter, and we have put forward some very, very good candidates. And although you are a good student, you're certainly not of that caliber. And we wouldn't want them to perceive our school as being represented by you, so to speak. So I was like, a bit of a pushback. So I went home and I said to my parents, and it was my dad who was very forceful about it. He said, well, rubbish. I don't care what he says. I'll drive you there. So he did. So he drove me up for my interview. And by hook or by crook, I got a place, which was absolutely super. Of course, the academic dean was then very, very pleased with the achievement of the school, and which I had achieved.
Claimed all credit for it.
And claimed all credit for it. But you know what? That has kind of been the very symbolic of so much of what I then continued to experience in life. And you're often told no, and you're often told you're not good enough, and presumptions are made. And really, you've got to go with your gut instinct and find those allies. And very often, those allies are actually the men in your life. So if I think about who's really helped me in my career, it's generally been the men. The reason being is A, they were generous and good people, and B, because they were the voice in the room when there were no women to speak up at all. And so I think that's probably why I've always wanted to mentor and sponsor and support other women, because otherwise you're relying on a few good men, and there's too few of them in order to get the job done. And it's really important that as women we actually support each other. So super pleased, went to university, actually read philosophy and theology, which I really enjoyed. And then I pivoted to law, because obviously a good idea to pursue a career where you can actually earn some money, so to speak. And I really liked the idea of law, so I went into private practice, really enjoyed it, and was at that point of going to, just trying to decide, do I go for partnership or not? And I looked ahead, and again, it was one of those pivotal moments. There were really only 3 women who were partners. One had just come back from maternity leave, and her colleagues had nicked all her clients. One was about to go on maternity leave and knew the same fate was about to befall her. And the other one, well, we knew her name, but nobody ever saw her, so we have no idea. And I thought, actually, you know what, I'm just not sure that I really want to fight that much of a battle. And financial services was totally up and coming. And so I thought, that's it, I'm going to go to financial services. That was in the day when in-house was almost secondary to private practice. And I thought, well, I'm not secondary. I refuse to be secondary, but financial services is super cool. So I'm going to go there. So I went to financial services and went to Citibank. And again, one of those moments where I was determined to come in and to make a great impression. Well, I got the chance to make an impression because everyone on the team left before I arrived. Literally in the notice period, they all left. And so I arrived and they said, well, why don't you lead the team? And I think one of those lessons in life is seize the opportunity when the opportunity presents itself. It was like, I don't know if I'm ready to lead the team, but you know what? The opportunity has presented itself. Seize it with both hands and absolutely go for it. What management training did I have? Almost none. But in many ways, I had the best management training because I'd had some pretty awful managers. And the key was not to be them. And so I did everything that wasn't them in order to try and be a good manager going forward. So making sure that things were inclusive, that people had an equivalent voice, to make sure that my team was balanced, to make sure that people were developed and nurtured, and that it was an environment where they could actually speak up. So I was at Citibank for 17 years, absolutely fantastic. Steered well away from the Women's Committee because I thought, actually, finally making my way, I don't really need anything else. And I have no idea what those ladies do anyway, but I'm sure they moan all the time. But then I hit the glass ceiling and it was like, oh my goodness, it absolutely exists. And so I decided to go over and see all the ladies in the City Women Network and find out what it was that they were doing. And actually a lot of it was moaning. But I thought I'd stick it out because you can't necessarily change from the outside. Sometimes you need to change from the inside. So I decided to change from within. So I joined the network, and sure enough, the opportunity arose pretty quickly for new leadership to present itself. And so I thought, well, that's it. I'm going to put my hand up and just do that. So I think a lot of it has been put your hand up and don't overthink it. Just seize the opportunity and grow with it. And so I ended up co-leading the City Women Network, which was probably one of the best things ever, because that gave me the opportunity to work with Jane Fraser, who is now the CEO of Citibank and the first female CEO on Wall Street. And we pivoted the network away from how do we support women in the workplace to how do we turn this into a business discussion? How do we actually access the women in the business and show the value, the business return on supporting women? And we started to hold those International Women's Day events where it was business focused. Invite all your female clients, engage them on an event and a topic, something where actually they get a voice at something that they're going to enjoy. So absolutely loved that. And built a team, changed many times, and so on and so forth. One of my ex-team members is sitting here as well, which is quite good fun. But then it was that GDPR moment, and I dodged privacy for years because I did technology and data law, basically. And I quite liked the privacy, but it was a bit like a boomerang. Every time I gave it to somebody, it kept coming back to me. And it was like, oh, no, this is a nightmare. But I finally got interested when I joined the industry bodies. So part of doing the job, I realized that actually I was quite curious, was not just doing the law, but being open to other opportunities. And so I joined AFME, I joined BBA, I joined City of London on behalf of the firm. And actually I realized what I enjoyed more than anything else was being at the thought leadership, at the pointy end, helping to shape the policy, and also helping to shape the legislation. So I ended up working closely with government affairs, and they didn't have expertise themselves in relation to cyber and data specifically because it was so niche. And so basically I had this fantastic opportunity to go with them to Brussels, to Parliament, and so on and so forth, and speak on behalf of the business in relation to these niche and weird and wonderful areas, which was fantastic. So I just loved that part of it, and I loved being engaged in the industry bodies. Ended up chairing RSG for 12 years, chairing AFME. I can't remember how long I chaired the AFME Data Committee, brought the BBA and the AFME committees together to do GDPR. Again, we had two chairs, myself and Helen, worked out that 50% of the membership was the same. So in a low ego moment, we said, why don't we just bring these two together for the purposes of our advocacy for GDPR, because it just makes so much sense. We can save people time, we can be much more impactful. And so we held these joint meetings together to talk GDPR, and then we'd hold separate meetings to talk about investment banking and retail banking. But that coming together and that collaboration of women, really powerful, using what we know best and what we do best to make a difference. So that was super cool. And then the GDPR thing was big, decided actually maybe I should ride that wave fully. So I was managing director at Citibank. I'd been there for a long time. It was like, where is my career going to now? And I realized that actually one of the important things in your career is to build broad as a way of building high. So it was really about the broader I built out my foundations, then actually there was more I could do to move up. And if I talk about things I regretted when I didn't take a P&L role. I will always regret not taking that opportunity to move out of legal. I didn't feel confident enough to do it at the time. I wish I had done. I'm still a lawyer now, and I hold my practicing certificate, but I don't practice law. But I do wish I'd made that move a bit earlier, to be perfectly honest. But go broad. So I did lots of things in terms of the industry bodies. I then became president of Women in Banking and Finance, which was probably one of the most exciting things ever. That's when I had a chance to write to Mark Carney as the governor of the Bank of England and say, Mark, we really ought to meet. I'm president of Women in Banking and Finance, and you really need to do something about gender inclusion at the Bank of England and for the financial services sector. So these are some times and dates that I'm available.
And can I just, for those who haven't seen the news today, he's
He's the head of the Liberal Party in Canada, and
yes.
He'll be fighting to be Prime Minister. I think the elections are in October.
Yes. So talk about building out to build up.
Yeah.
Vivienne's networking.
Totally. Get a couple of those under your belt.
Yeah.
He was, I don't know if he knew what to say. So he said, yes, all right. So I went to go and see him. And I said, would you be the keynote speaker for Women in Banking and Finance at our annual lunch? And he said, no, I don't think so. But tell me a little bit more about what you do. So I did. And then a couple of weeks later, I get this email to say, actually, no, Mark would be delighted to accept your invitation. I thought, well, just as well he wasn't too much longer, because I already had a couple of other people I was contacting. But what was really interesting was he also saw the opportunity, and he used that lunch at Women in Banking and Finance, which is where, it was actually the awards lunch, which I got into my awards thing, where we recognized and celebrated female talent across the financial services sector, and been doing so for 25 years, as an opportunity to launch the, I suppose, the gender strategy at the Bank of England. So he was our keynote speaker, and we were delighted to have him as the governor of the Bank of England, but he also used us in order to announce what they were doing at the Bank of England. And as you know, the Bank of England's actually very forward-looking when it comes to inclusion, a really interesting place to be, and a lot more women in much more senior positions, as the case may be. So I then decided to embrace privacy full-time, so I went to Thomson Reuters as a chief privacy officer. I was a bit gutted. Within 3 months, my boss said to me, we're splitting in half. It was like, are you kidding me? I left my cushy job at Citibank, where actually I had position and title and tenure and all the rest of it to do something exciting, and I felt as if, choom, the carpet had been pulled out from underneath me. But anyway, I gave myself a week of flapping out, and then I decided to actually seize the moment. So I went with the financial services part of the business. Best thing ever. There was nothing quite like, I thought I liked big organizations where things were stable. This was, as our CEO said, we're a $6 billion startup. And I was like, how do you be a $6 billion startup? But anyway, I suppose they've got some new management and all the rest of it, and it's a new company, it's a new brand. But again, I think I would say that probably the best organization I've ever worked in was Refinitiv, because they absolutely empowered all of their senior leaders to lead. Whereas previously I'd found, as a woman, even when they sent you on a leadership course, all they ever wanted you to do was to manage. They didn't really want you to lead. They didn't really want you to disrupt. They didn't really want you to be different. So you would go off, you'd be inspired, you would learn all these wonderful things, and then you would come back to your job and it was like just the status quo, stay where you are. I remember when I was made managing director, I popped over to my boss. I was the only lawyer to be made managing director for the region that year. It was just as the financial crisis hit. And I said to him, I am ready to, I'm ready to serve. Hand to me whatever it is that you need me to do. I'm so thrilled that you've promoted me to managing director. This is a fantastic opportunity. I really want to give back and be an important part of this organization. And, you know, I'm going to take that role seriously. And he said, that's nice, Vivienne. You just stay where you are and keep doing what you're doing. I was absolutely floored. And that was one of the reasons why eventually I chose to leave. It was like, are you kidding me? You promoted me to do what I was doing before? That's not what the promotion is supposed to be for. It's supposed to be that you can take that next step and be that leader. That was extraordinary. But no, I went to Refinitiv, fantastic place, and then there was the reverse takeover with the London Stock Exchange, so I ended up being the Chief Privacy Officer at the London Stock Exchange, and then realized actually I did enjoy that much more dynamic environment, and you know, doing that whole deal was super exciting, and it was COVID, but I realized it was also time to take that next step in my career. So I left, and I was actually looking for a data strategy role, because I realized that we really need to be thinking about data much more holistically, not just in those silos of technology or privacy or intellectual property or banking secrecy, as the case may be, but it's time to do something broader. And just couldn't really find that right role, but ended up doing a lot of consultancy and advisory work. And I'd already taken on a NED role, because as I said, you know, build it broad and then you can go up. So I was already a board director for one company, and then I decided, actually, you know what, I'm going to embrace this full time, and it's super exciting. And what I loved about it was it gave me the opportunity to deliver my best, to be strategic, to really add value without having all of the, I suppose, the management and the responsibility of teams and of organizations underneath. And so for the first time in my life, I didn't have a global team to manage and all the politics to do and the end of year appraisals and the budgets. All I had to do was manage myself, and I could choose whether or not I went to that conference or not, or if I did that meeting or not, which has been the game changer for me. So it's been super, super interesting. Anyway, that sort of brings me to where I am now. The one thing that was missing for me was the ED&I piece. When I stepped down from Women in Banking and Finance, which was absolutely amazing, I was really looking to do more for women in this space. And the opportunity came up to lead the FTSE Women Leaders Review. Let me just tell you what the review is. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not. In 2011, the government asked Lord Davies to have a look at the representation of women on the boards of the FTSE 350. And they found that women constituted only 9.5% of board directors in the FTSE 350, really, really low. And so the Davies Review was set up, and they set a target of 25% to increase the representation of women at the top of British business. And so over a period of 5 years, they tracked the representation each year across the FTSE 350, and that target was met. So then they created the Hampton-Alexander Review as the successor, and actually realized that all the science and all the data showed that unless you had 1/3 representation or more, you would never actually have a proper voice or the ability to properly contribute. It would always be a minority grouping that may have some influence and impact, but wasn't really going to be a game-changing number. And so the target changed to 33%, and over the next 5 years, sure enough, the FTSE 350 met that 33% target. And the third iteration of the review since 2021 has been the FTSE Women Leaders Review, which is here. They extended it out to include the 50 largest private companies, but also to look at leadership data, so not just boards, but leadership. So as of last year, I became the chief executive for the FTSE Women Leaders Review, sort of 3 years into the 5-year cycle, where what we do is we set the target, which is now 40%. We measure the responses from the companies as to where they're actually getting to on boards and leadership. We publish that data, and that transparency creates accountability. So the organizations can then measure themselves against their peers. It's also public information about how well they're progressing. Any ideas as to where we are this year?
I'm going to guess 13%.
No. Be optimistic.
20?
More.
24?
Man, if we met the 25 and we met the 33, so now we're 40%. 40% is what we're aiming for.
38.
Who's going to say higher? 40? No, Caroline, what did you say? 45. No, not 45. It's 43%. 43% this year. So smashed the target in 2022 of 40%. Right. But isn't that incredible? So since 2011 at 9.5%, this year 43% women on boards. Now we can unpick that a little bit. More than about 50% of the NED roles are women and men, but when you actually get down to the executive roles, it's only about 15% are women, and most of them are men. When we look at the data, still 6 in 10 board roles and leadership roles are going to men, not to women. But nonetheless, there has been tremendous progress that's been made in relation to the board level. When it comes to leadership, which is the C-suite and the direct reports, we're at, have a guess, because it's not as good as the boards, but it's pretty good.
I was so wrong the first time.
No, you're not going to take a chance.
No, I'm not taking a chance.
Okay, are we above 30%? Say yes. Yeah. Good. Okay, I'll tell you where we are at 35%. 35% for the FTSE 350, which is great. We're not going to get 40% target by the end of this year, but again, tremendous progress being made, because if you look at it 10 years ago, it was only at 24%. So that's the power of the data. And that's one of the things that really attracted me to this, is the data piece. So having started my career looking at technology, which is what I was really doing, and that became e-commerce, and that became social media, and then privacy was the big thing. I think what's guided me is being able to pivot and change and move with what evolved. I mean, I think when I started my career, and probably the same thing with you, Janine, there wasn't legislation. We were relying on the Sale of Goods Act and a bunch of construction cases. And now if you think of the wealth of legislation, I mean, some of it I haven't even read. There's just so much of it now. It's absolutely extraordinary. But the data has been that thread throughout. And now in the world of AI, it's even more important that actually we embrace the data piece, because the AI is nothing without the data.
Vivienne, did you say 14% for board level?
About 15% are executive directors.
Executive directors.
NEDs are 50% women and men.
And why do you think there's such a low rate for, why do you think we're sitting at 15%?
The executive director roles tend to be the CEO. So the one data point that's really depressing this year, or disappointing, shall we say, disappointing, is actually if you look at, there's been an increase in the leadership levels, there's been an increase in the board levels, there's been an increase in the number of women as financial directors, as chairs on boards. The only number that's come down is CEOs. We've actually dropped CEOs. We've dropped one female CEO in the FTSE 350. We only have 19 female CEOs in the FTSE 350. And in the 50 private companies, we now have 8 female CEOs, dropped by 2. It was 10 last year. Female CEOs, I mean, if you just look in the press, they appear to have a much harder time than male CEOs in terms of the standards by which they're judged, the scrutiny which they are under, the pressure that they get from shareholders. It's a really, really tough job, actually. I mean, being CEO is tough enough, but being a female CEO, particularly when you're a CEO, you're always a female CEO. You're never a male CEO. You're a female CEO or you're a CEO. You always have that extra bit, and that extra bit of scrutiny creates some real challenges. And we've seen, you know, some of the issues where we've had female CEOs step down. You know, it's scandals where often I would suggest maybe the men would have survived them better, but they felt they had to go, which is a bit of a shame. And also the tenure at that executive level for women is slightly less than for men. And I think a lot of that is the glass ceiling. It's the challenges that women face in leadership, that we're judged to a different standard, that we always have to be that much better in order to succeed.
Yeah, interesting. Vivienne, you made some points around your early experience as looking to go to Cambridge and the way your academic dean responded to that. And you made me think about a conversation I had over the weekend, and also something which one of my directors posted in a sort of a conversation around International Women's Day in our team. And a friend of mine, so similar age to us, consultant, she told me a story over the weekend about having her academic dean tried to dissuade her from doing medicine, and she just decided she was going to go for it. She was going to be the first person in her family to go to university. And she said all those years later, she's now a lung consultant, and who landed up being her patient? But that very same gentleman. And she had to remind him that, you know, he was, you know, taught her, etc. And she thought it was on the tip of her tongue to say something, but she didn't. But she was so obviously so pleased that it did not break her spirit, and she was just going to go for it. But also she came from a school in the northern England, very, very poor area, and he basically said to her, no one is going to go to medical school from this school, and definitely not if you're a woman. So it just shows that generation, because I think you and I are a similar age, and she is a similar age. And then one of my directors also posted in the chat, and again, similar age, she just had her 50th birthday, and she also said how she wasn't given a lot of encouragement at school to go and study law. And I'd like to think that things have changed now, and that's nothing that our daughters or our goddaughters or that, you know, would, or our friends' daughters would face. But I think part of it is, as you said, the people who hold the door open for you. And I agree with you that many years back, it wasn't the woman, because we did not have many role models as women. And that was actually a conversation I had with friends of mine who are in a same-sex marriage, and they have a little daughter. And I remember both of them saying to me, when I was growing up, I never thought I could have this, because there was no one who was being a role model as having this. So it's really important, I think, for all of us to try and be role models in this space. And the doors definitely are opened for us now, a lot more than they were before. And it is men and women who have held that door open for us. I shared with my team over the weekend I obviously looked at lots of International Women's Day quotes, but one of them that really stood out for me was, a strong woman is a woman who stands up for herself. A stronger woman is a woman who stands up for others. And I think that's a really, really important takeaway. You know, I was just thinking about it as you were talking. Now, one last sort of thought about the things that you have, what has been front of mind when you've made decisions about what is the next step for you?
I think making those decisions is really, really difficult. So I suppose I haven't given myself too much of a, I don't want to say not too much of a challenge, but I haven't tried to be overly prescriptive. I try not to think more than 5 years ahead, because life changes and you've no idea what it brings to you. So I always think about it in terms of a 5-year period of time. So where would I like to be in 5 years' time? And if I take this opportunity, where do I think it will take me? And then I always make the point in 5 years' time of looking back and seeing how far I have moved from my target. And that's really exciting. It's not about actually achieving that particular goal. It's actually about, so what else have I managed to do during that time, and how have things changed? One of the other things is just not to have any regrets. You make that decision and then you just move on, because you can't go back. You can't rewind time. So be contented with the decision you made. It may not be your free choice. It may not be what is ideal. It may not be what you really, really wanted at the time, but absolutely go for it. Don't be afraid to go laterally sometimes. Give yourself a break. It might not be the right time to make a really ambitious choice. Going sideways is also good. What I wouldn't do is just stay put. Staying put, I think, really slows you down, and you're not building that lovely base and foundation. And the other thing is just be careful about banging on the closed door too much. Very often people get a bee in their bonnet. I definitely want to do this. I must do this. And keep banging on the closed door. If the door is closed, take a step back and see if you can find the open window, and go through that instead, because that is the way to move forward. Otherwise, you'll be standing there banging at that door for far too long, and it may never open. Maybe it will one of these days, but you've wasted so much time in the process. Find the window.
And building on that, I think your point around sideways moves. Yeah. I think people underestimate sideways moves, because a lot of us went to university, and if you were studying law, you had this plan ahead of you, and you were kind of, I have to get into a law firm, and then I have to become an associate, and then I have to become a senior associate, and then I have to become a partner, and I can't do anything else. Was actually, there are so many other things for us to do now, and for those of us who have now gone into in-house roles, and I feel like I work as hard in my in-house role as I ever worked in private practice, and quite frankly, I think I do loads of exciting stuff. I wouldn't want to swap it for going back into a private practice role, but I am conscious that I need to keep my mind open to things beyond law, and a sideways move into another role, if your company allows you to do it, is not necessarily a bad thing. And that can be a different area of law, or to bring another area of law into your team, or just to upskill into because different spaces kind of unlock different doors for you. So now, this is going into a nice segue where I'd like to bring Sarah up, and for us to talk a little bit about, because we've talked about Vivienne's journey, a bit about the fact that she scaled that in those shoes. So when I saw those shoes, I was like, oh my gosh, Sarah, those shoes are gorgeous. They're beautiful. I can't believe you're walking in them. She said, well, no, I was in trainers. I was in other shoes on the way here. And I thought, so was I. And I changed to flats. Anyway, she brings the glam to the stage. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, firstly, how the three of us know each other. And then a little bit about some thoughts and reflections to our younger selves. And, just listening to you, I was thinking, oh God, I had a few. But so how do I know Vivienne, aside from Israel? So I think Vivienne and I have been around in this space for a similar amount of time. So we started our journey, and actually we hail from the same continent. So I think you were born in Zimbabwe?
No,
Rhodesia?
in South Africa.
Oh, so in South Africa, but you lived a bit of time in Zimbabwe. And I was born in South Africa. So there is something about coming from South Africa, or the southern part of Africa, that you talk a similar language, like you understand what flings are, and you understand what a peppermint crisp is, and and you can have conversations where you immediately relate to each other. And so we've always had that in common, but I've always also admired, as Sarah said, your journey and the decisions you've made and sort of the leader that you have been. And there are some people who sort of stand out for you during your career, and your worlds keep intersecting with each other. And within my sort of generational group, Vivienne is definitely one of those. And just in terms of reflections, because I know we're going to get on to that, I think building your network so that you create friendships which actually endure over time, and where you are able to pick up the phone to someone and say, can I just get your thoughts on this? Or where if somebody phones you and says, do you know who'd be good for that? You think, how about this person in my network? So Vivienne has always been one of those people for me that I felt I could reach out to her, she reaches out to me, and I've always felt I will get a very frank, honest view of an issue or a topic or an individual skill sets. So that's sort of, I have a long, long history with Vivienne. I have a shorter history with Sarah, but it is turning out to be a beautiful one. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now to sort of kind of give an intro to how she knows us.
So mine, slightly different. As I say, I knew Vivienne. Don't know whether she knew me at that time, but for a very long time. And I think really what sort of 2 points to note here. Obviously now, Vivienne does some work with Sipple, and I'm at Hunton, and we often work with Sipple. Obviously, we share offices. So we see each other on a regular basis. Janine and I met through one of these networking events, I think, and that's really sort of where it brings it full circle. And one point I wanted to make is certainly we have known each other through a networking organization, not organization as such, but just through being in this space for quite some time and seeing each other on the circuit, as they say. But equally, that's also then where I've been seeing Vivienne over the last few years, and then we're sort of all together now, and we come across each other very regularly in this space. So I think that just sort of shows the merit of networking and its true value.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it used to be such a small community that you knew most everybody. And I think one of the things that drove us all to connect was the fact that actually back in your firm, it was often quite lonely. It was lonely because privacy wasn't exactly very glam. Privacy wasn't exactly seen as a massive business enabler. It didn't always have the better reputation, shall we say, that it has today. And so having the opportunity to just commune with others who knew why we were doing this, what was important about it, the impact we could have, how we could make our businesses better and also make our society better through responsible data use was just hugely empowering. So whether it was industry bodies that we met through, or conferences or events, the community has grown and it's so much bigger, but it started quite small, and you trust each other because there's no competition in this. There's no competition in helping each other to not just survive, but to thrive in this space. And there are so many opportunities out there that actually we're not competing for the same ones. And it's wonderful to be able to have that companionship and also to help each other on their way. And that was one of the reasons why I set up the Picasso Awards, was for me that was a really fantastic opportunity when I was sort of not associated with a specific film, to be independent, to create the awards as a way of recognizing and celebrating the amazing contributions that people have made, organizations have made, but also the innovations in this space. Because if there's one thing we don't get a shout out for often is privacy. I mean, there are no international independent awards out there for privacy at all. If you're a cybersecurity expert, if you're an insurance expert, if you're a technology person, if you're an accountant, even the lawyers have lawyer awards, but not privacy awards. But the privacy and data piece is one where I think we do need to celebrate. And if I suppose one of those learnings is if you don't do it yourself and you wait for others to do it, it may never happen. So just get off your bottom and make it happen. And that was for me the driver for the Picasso Privacy Awards, was actually it's that opportunity to say thank you, to celebrate, to congratulate. I saw the power of that when I was at Women in Banking and Finance, elevating women in their roles. In fact, that was where my big promo came. Was I had nominated a number of women over the years for the awards. I absolutely loved them. They're absolutely super. And then one year, one of my colleagues said, I'm going to nominate you for an award. And I said, oh, don't be ridiculous. I'm sure we've got other talented people. And she said, no, you actually tick most of the boxes. You know what it's like when you look at a job description and you're sitting there, do I tick 95% of the requirements? Otherwise, I'm not going to apply. And I looked at it and I thought, well, yeah, it's about 80%, but it's not 100%. So I said, really, we need to be very, very careful about this because I don't actually tick all the boxes. She's like, no, we're going to put it in anyway. So put it in. And sure enough, I actually won the Champion for Women award. It was absolutely incredible. And I had invited my boss, because I wasn't really expecting to win, but I thought this is the best it's going to get. So he may as well be there and see that I've been shortlisted, and to see all the amazing female talent out there. And as I came off the stage, he literally dragged me to one side, and I'm trying to get to the table to be with all my friends. He's like, come over here, Vivienne, come over here. And I said, yes. And he said, I have been thinking about this, and I think you ought to join the senior leadership team. And I was like, are you kidding me? I've been asking for this for 3 years, and you didn't want to do it. But it was fascinating. When you get that external affirmation and validation, suddenly that was it. And I mean, WiLD, you'll remember this. Suddenly a meeting was called 9 a.m. on Monday morning, and everyone thought, something big has happened. The general counsel's going to resign. The CEO is left. We're changing the legal department altogether. Something's going to happen. And he stands up and he says, yeah, well, Vivienne won this award, and we've decided to promote 3 women to the senior leadership team. And it was like, great, but it was unusual, shall we say, in the way. But for him, I think it was a big light bulb moment, actually recognizing and celebrating that talent. So for me, I just think it's so fundamentally important because it absolutely changed my career. And it wasn't going to happen organically internally. The only way it was going to happen was externally. And so often that is the case. So if you get an opportunity to support others, to help them, to give them that extra nudge, that push, put them in the limelight, I think sponsorship cannot be underrated. It's just so important because it's a game changer.
My takeaway from that was when you take someone to an award ceremony, make sure it's your boss and not your husband. But she has gone on to receive an OBE and Freedom of the City for London. So does that mean you shepherd sheep across the bridge or something?
I did. It's great fun.
Yes. Right.
Yes, as a free person or a free man, I think when I had my ceremony, they said I could be a free woman, so I thought, thank God for that. But yes, you can drive sheep across London Bridge, and there's a ceremony, you can do that once a year. I did that in September. It was absolutely great fun. You can carry a sword, but they recommend you don't in case you're arrested in this current day and age. If you're drunk and disorderly, they must actually put you in a cab rather than in prison.
I've seen loads of books, roast lamb.
What I really want is free Wi-Fi and free parking, but that doesn't come with it. So the City of London, the Freedom of, is fantastic because I've done so much work with the City of London over the years, and it was absolutely fantastic to be recognised in that way. And the OBE was lovely. So I'll tell you one of the nice things about the OBE is that I was in the first year that anyone from our sector got recognised in the honours list for what we do. So for me, that OBE is 2 things, because my OBE was for services to financial services and professional services. And my financial services piece was really on the data side. So to get that OBE, I sort of felt as if I shared that with all of the financial services and privacy community, and then the other half of it was very much in relation to the work I was doing at Women in Banking and Finance. And again, I feel as if I share that with everyone in Women in Banking and Finance, because I wouldn't have gotten that OBE if I hadn't had the opportunity to work with all of these people and to achieve the things that we did together. You know, it's a together thing. Okay, one person got the OBE, but it was really working and collaborating together that made the difference and the change, and was the opportunity, wasn't it? It was absolutely super. So I was really pleased, actually, to get my OBE from Princess Anne.
Wow.
Who is really impressive.
Yes. I wouldn't want to cross her.
No. But super impressive. And it was lovely to get it from, you know, the princess as opposed to anyone.
We've lined this up for International Women's Day, haven't we? Yes. I want to ask Sarah a few questions around, or a question around, because you've obviously, and I think you've always been in private practice.
Yes, I've done a number of secondments that have been quite lengthy.
Right.
One was a year, and as Chief Privacy Officer for Richemont. But other than that, yes. No.
For Richemont, did you say? Luxury goods.
Well,
yes.
I kind of like them, yes.
Yes.
That was a nice time.
And so just some reflections from you on that journey, and because obviously private practice over the years, tough. Your former self, what would if you were speaking to little Sarah or younger Sarah?
Younger Sarah, shall we say? Yeah.
What are the things you would want to say to her?
Because I know this is something that we've probably all done, and certainly for International Women's Day, there was a lot over social media, etc. And it does make you think, and I do often think about that, the journey. I think a few things, believe in yourself. Because certainly, and this goes back to our generational thing, back in the early days, I think it's different now, but it's, you know, there wasn't anyone saying, sort of bigging you up as a little girl. I know I had dinner with a friend the other night, and she said that the attitude now towards kids at school, she's got 2 girls, 1 boy, but she said the girls have just got so much confidence. They believe they can do absolutely anything they want to in this world. And just they're being told that every day. It's being drilled into them. We never had that at school, I'll tell you. So I think believe in yourself and be patient, actually. I think I was always, certainly you talked about sort of, you know, you go into private practice, the steps are sort of effectively laid out for you if you want to go down that route. And I think certainly I was someone that was, okay, let's get to the next level now. Let's do the next thing now. Let's keep going. And I think I was somewhat impatient to get there. I think just be patient, and life's a journey, and, you know, enjoy it, really. The final thing I will say is don't be afraid to ask for help. And certainly amongst sort of your surrounding community, that can be from men, women, doesn't matter, but just don't be afraid to ask for help. You talk to people, soundbite, you know, get sound off ideas, and it's helpful. And I think there was a period where I certainly felt that I had to, no, can't do that, I have to be independent, do it on my own, which I still am to some degree, but you have to appreciate that there is help out there if you want it. So talk to people about it.
And we were chatting on Friday about some of our thoughts, and we were sort of bouncing ideas around about what we would tell our younger self. And I think I would tell my younger self different things at different moments in my journey. The 20-year-old versus the 30-year-old versus the 40-year-old versus the 50-year-old has different priorities and looks at the world slightly differently. And I think in my 20s, I was like, rah, cannot get there fast enough, what's the next thing? And your point about just, you're going to get wherever you're going to get to anyway. So sort of slow down, smell the roses, have some fun. Whereas I think I was I was in such a rush to go somewhere. I'm not sure where I thought I'd get to any faster. In my 30s, I had my children. And I think my takeaway from that was, and it's something I'm really, really bad at, but kind of understand where the boundaries are so that you make time to be present and in the moment. Because I spent way too much time on the sidelines of sports events thinking about the next call, the next meeting, on weekends doing things, having a conversation where I wasn't even in the conversation. I was just saying yes, no, what, because I was so busy thinking about all these other things. And I think you miss other important opportunities and moments if you are not mentally present. So I think that was a reflection. I think also something I have to constantly remind myself of is stop worrying about stuff that you can't influence. Because so many, I think as you get more and more senior, you have more and more responsibilities in terms of team management, looking after people. And one of the things that I think does stress me out, and I find myself trying to throw my body literally on it like I'm throwing myself on a grenade, is if, for example, they say we're bringing in cost cutting. And then I'm sort of, how's this going to affect my team? And I'm like this tiger mother around it. And I have to remember to kind of, that the other people in the room aren't behaving like me. So and to think more strategically about where I spend my energy, and which is all about use your energy on the things you can control and influence. And the other stuff, you've just got to hope that you have landed everything that you needed to land to get the result that you would like. And sometimes the result is not the result that you would like, but then you've got to think about how to manage yourself and others through that. So I think be careful not to waste energy on things you cannot control. And then I think your point about relationships and building networks, which is one of the reasons why we've set this up, is so, so, so important because you can't do it all on your own. And you'll be surprised at the amount of times when, I'm a firm believer of you put stuff out into the universe and the universe pays you back. There are moments in time where I've been able to help other people, and I get something from helping other people. But there are times when people have helped me. But that wouldn't have happened if that network and relationship wasn't there. And then finally, just have some fun, because we all only get so many journeys around the sun. It's a lottery as to how many summers we actually have. So have some fun along the way. And if you get an opportunity, really think about taking it. You know, whenever these things come to you, and I'm really bad at saying no. I don't know where Chanel is, my ear. I told her this year, please make me say no more often. So she keeps saying to me, you said no. You said you've got to say no to things. But really think about taking opportunities as they come. And they may not always come in the format you thought they would come in, but you might get something out of it or learn something. So those are sort of and finally, just be a little bit wild. Like, never lose that ability. There's a saying, what's his name? The guy from Apple. He makes some comment about, always be hungry, always be humble, and always want to have, ask stupid questions, do silly things, do crazy things. And I think that having that little spark of wildness in you, don't let life kill that. I think that's really important as well.
I just love that the network is now called WiLD, because I think as lawyers we're naturally cautious, and I think from a data perspective, I think there's a perception we might be a little bit boring. And that is so not the case. Find that inner wildness in yourself. I think that's absolutely super. Everything you've said resonates with me. It's amazing. A few things from my perspective is be the role model that you want to see in others. You can't start soon enough. One of the things that really impressed me was a young woman who came to me and said, would you help me edit my book? And I said, sure. And I'm thinking, what are you writing a book about? And it was actually a book about how young women succeed in the world today. And I just thought, well, that is so fascinating, because usually it comes from my age group. How to succeed in the world today. Let me share with you my experiences. And it was like, no, she's writing it from her experience. It was the best book I've ever read. It was absolutely fantastic. So she'd taken all the learning, she'd spoken to everybody, and then she said, and as a young woman, through my eyes, from what I've learned from all of you, this is how to navigate and succeed in the world today. Her name is Kate Sarala, so you find her book, it's absolutely super. fantastic. So be that role model that you want to see in others, because there's no reason why you can't be. You can be a role model even as a child. You can be that person that people want to go to or to be with, because actually you're the one who is a natural leader. You're the one who shows compassion as well as courage. The other piece is to be curious. Super important to be curious. Curious in terms of life. I found that that has been probably the biggest enabler for me, is that curiosity, is don't damp it down, actually explore it and see if that is of interest to you. When I'm curious and I go to events, that's where I learn things and I meet interesting people and I come away all the richer for it. And I've made new friends. It's been absolutely super. I think one of the challenges we also have, though, often as women, is that we continue to accumulate things. And I did a big weed out last year, actually, and the lesson I have to keep telling myself is know when to start and know when to end. And so when I started the awards, I knew that there would come a time when I'd have to say, I've set it up, we've achieved what we wanted to achieve, and now I must move on and let somebody else take it forward. And I think that that is quite liberating. You know, Women in Banking and Finance, I started my term, yes, I did an extra year, but then it was, and now it is time to hand it over to somebody else. You can only give your best for a certain amount of time. And then actually it's a bit more of the BAU. And I think you do a service to the organization or the network or whatever it is, that role, if you actually then move on. So when you start something new, think about what you're also going to say goodbye to. Otherwise, you will absolutely overload yourself. And I think it gives you the freedom to do new things, as opposed to feeling under pressure. But yeah, those would be my three. Actually, one of the things we didn't mention was the disruptive world in which we operate.
Yes. I know I'm being told to wind up, but we've got to quickly say this, and then we're going to get Bella up on the stage to close out for us. But we had a little chat before we came in, and we were talking a little bit about what's going on in the world right now, which I'm sure you're all following, which is somewhat concerning. But we wanted to talk a little bit about women and the role they play in disruption. And I'm going to ask Vivienne to give us some insights.
Super interesting. So there's an index, actually Alex Partners does it, which is called the Disruptive Index. And there's lots of organizations that follow the disruption in the world. And what they did is they did a survey of all the of a huge number of CEOs to analyze, what is the disruption in the world? It's geopolitical, it's technological, it's digital transformation, it's cyber, it's a whole bunch of things. Anyway, so there's a list of, what are the big disruptive issues in the world today. And then they looked at the responses from the CEOs as to how they address it. What's super fascinating is they did a cut of the data, women versus men. And what they found was that women had a much more positive outlook. They saw more opportunity in the disruption than men. And women also were much more likely to take advice and to consult others before acting in relation to that disruption. And I thought that was really interesting, because if you think about it, if you see disruption as an opportunity, you're going to be curious, you're going to invest, you're going to lean in, you're going to be thinking creatively about how you can get the most out of it. If you're seeing disruption as a negative, you're going to pull up the drawbridge, you're going to cut the spending, you're going to draw in, as the case may be. So two very different ways. And the other part of it really is around that consultation. I thought it was really interesting, the openness that many women have. And this is why I think we really do need to push on having more female CEOs and leaders, not just CEOs, but women in leadership, because we do have a tendency to consult and to collaborate, to go out and get the best views, to think about actually what we do before we do it, which I think is very, very powerful, particularly in a world where there's a lot of challenge around inclusive environments. I mean, it's just good management, isn't it?
It's so interesting because my boss and a few of us out there, our Ultimate Group General Counsel, the one thing she always says in a crisis is, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And that is something I will forever associate that saying with her. because she definitely looks at things that way. So I'm going to call on Bella to wrap up, because I know we probably all want a little snack or two upstairs and to get the view. And hopefully the rain is cleared and we get a good view of London. Over to Bella.
Perfect. I'll keep this super brief. It feels like an Oscars wrap-up. We're going to get kicked off the stage. Just want to say, firstly, a huge thank you to Vivienne for coming back to support us again. It's such a luxury to have you not once, but twice. And hopefully we'll see you soon. I also want to say a huge thank you to Sarah and Janine for supporting me on this venture that we created. Probably at the beginning it seemed a little bit crazy, but so far it's going pretty well. I also want to extend a thank you to all of you for being here on Monday morning, and it's raining, and it's muggy, and the weather's all a bit gross. So thank you for making time to be here today. And I want to extend, she's filming, but a huge thank you to Alana, who has done all of this beautiful work. It looks amazing. I have come dressed appropriately. If you guys want to come dressed in green next time, I'll really enjoy it. But I can't see them very well, but there's 3 boys back there who sit on the privacy team with me, and they do a lot of their legal work as well. I want to say a huge thank you to them for helping me do this. I couldn't do it alone. But overall, I'd really like to give a huge round of applause to Sarah, Janine, and Vivienne for everything that they do, and Vivienne for sharing her insights again. So thank you, guys.